Hello everyone, welcome back to the workshop, and today I'm working on a little bit of a project I thought I'd bring you along with, and that has to do with engraving these acacia cutting boards. We're coming up on gift season and thought this would be a good time to share how I'm going to customize these boards for a couple people I want to give them to. And so then I thought it might be something that you would be interested in yourself. Now, a lot of people make their own cutting boards, and that's great. I've done it in the past, but sometimes you just don't have the time, and it gets more expensive to develop those. So I did source these online. I will have a link to them down below if you're interested to try these out. But with all that, let's just jump right into this project. All right, so as I mentioned, I bought these online, and here's one that is actually still wrapped up. These came in a 6-pack, and they're normally, I think, about $48, $49 for the bundle, which comes out to be right around $8 a board. So it's not too bad, and I'm hoping I can get the engravings done in a fairly timely manner, hopefully under 10 minutes, to keep my production costs down as well. So hopefully the end result is that we can take these boards that cost about $8 for the material, add some machine time, add a little bit of design time, and then be able to offer them up at, maybe around that $30 mark. It's not terribly expensive, and but definitely brings extra value to this board to some people that might want their custom engravings. Now, I'm going to be doing these as gifts, but I thought I'd throw that out there as kind of just approximate pricing. We'll look at if we're able to make that kind of production time at the end, kind of see what that might cost out as, and see if it would be worthwhile offering these up, or if we need to adjust our prices from there. So like I said, these are made from acacia wood. I know some people like the bamboo boards. The acacia is actually a hardwood. It's a fairly sustainable product. This does grow fast, but it is a fairly good harder wood, and it engraves nice, but it also is something that's used because it doesn't rot very easily. It is pretty durable, so it does actually make pretty good cutting boards. Now, the question that you may have to answer yourself is, do you want to engrave on the surface where it might get used? Because this does have a juice groove around the outside. Or do you want to engrave on the back to preserve the top for the engraving, or to preserve the top to be used, but protect the engraving on the back? That's something that maybe you and your client or you yourself are going to need to decide. I'm going to put them on the top. They'll look nice as gifts, and then the end person is going to have to decide if they want to use them or just display them. But so there's some things to look into, and I'm probably going to also look at just adding in some extra finish with some mineral oil or some cutting board oil, and then just advise them that they need to wash this gently, hand wash only. You don't want to submerge them, and then these will need treatment every so often, as most wooden cutting boards will. But they're fairly maintenance free with that, and it's fairly easy to get that oil and possibly a little beeswax mixed into that to make more of a conditioner. But again, these are ready to go. At most, you might want to just sand them with like maybe a 200 to 300 grit sandpaper if they're just a little bit fuzzy. It's been a little hit or miss on these. Some of them have been very smooth, some of them feel just a little grainy. So I just went ahead on a couple of them and then hit them with the sander at about a 320 grit, just to bring that fuzz down a little bit. But now what I want to do next is want to jump into Lightburn. We're going to pull the logos in that we're going to use on these, and then we'll jump over to the laser and talk a little bit about positioning. So let's jump into the software and see how that looks. Okay, so we are in Lightburn, and I'm going to be using the xTool D1 20W Pro for this project. So I've got that all queued up in our software. And what we're going to want to do is bring in the logo. And who I'm doing this for is a local beef farmer. I've been working with them on beef for a while, and they've provided a lot for my family through their business. And I just thought it'd be nice to give them a little bit of thank you. So what I'm going to do is try to come find their logo. And they're S&J Farms out of southern Minnesota here. And they kind of have this nice little, looks like a handwritten S&J with the farms. And so what we need to do is try to capture that logo. And so I'm actually going to try to save this image. And so we'll just go S&J Farms. Just drop this out here on our computer somewhere. And then we're going to jump back into Lightburn and see if we can import that one. So I believe that just went out on our desktop. And we've got it here as S&J Farms. So that came in very nicely. It was already a transparent background. And we could just go ahead and scale this to our boards. So I'm gonna scale this up just a little bit to see how it's looking. And I think I looked at our boards. I'm going to go with roughly about 7x7-ish or so. And we could just try engraving it this way, but what I want to do is actually change this out of an image, and we're going to trace it. So I'm going to come here to tools with that image selected, trace image, and we're going to come in here, and I like to turn on fade image. It kind of just helps us see the lines a little bit closer. We're going to come take a look and see how things are looking on this whole signature bar. Overall, it's okay. You can adjust your threshold and your cutoff a little bit if things aren't quite lining up like this. You could try to get this dip a little bit more, but I don't think that's going to show up too much. But then the second thing I'm going to want to look at is this text. Is it going to come out fairly cleanly? Some things I'm seeing here is we've got a little bit of an arc here or an angle there. So I may import this as is, but then try to fix that with just fonts. So once we're happy with this, we're going to go ahead and hit OK. And I did have the option selected to delete image after processing. So it's now replaced it with just the outline. And that's looking pretty good for the signature part. But as I said, there's just a little bit of roundness to some of these letters. And I'm pretty sure this font is supposed to be a little bit more, straight and consistent. So we're going to try to match this. And it actually looks a lot like the default font. So I'm just going to come up here. And we're going to want to size this down a little bit, matched, and then I'm just going to type out our words here. So oops, got to be all capitalized, farms. And yeah, so it does look very close to an Arial font. There's some differences here, but it's going to be really close. Now, you notice that their spacing is a little bit wider. Now, if you just drag this out, it's going to stretch those letters out and it's not going to look right. So we're going to undo that. But what we can do is we can come up here to our spacing, vertical and horizontal spacing. We can start adjusting our horizontal spacing, see if we can match what's going on down here. So I'm going to try to get that somewhat centered and keep bumping this up a little bit, moving it over until it matches a little bit more closely. So that's really close, maybe just a couple more clicks at most. And that's really close. Now the R is slightly different. But I think for this as a gift, it'll be okay. If I was working with the company, I would definitely say, hey, can you provide me your vector image? And I would make sure it's spot on, because you want to make sure that their branding stay the same. But as a gift, I think we're going to be okay this way. Now I want to make sure that gets lined up back where it was, because we're actually going to come back to this image. We're going to ungroup all this. And now we'll be able to interact with these individually. But what I want to do is I'm going to draw a box around it just to give us kind of a guide on our tool layer. Come in and basically just kind of square that up as close as we can to the extents, about like that. And then we can come in with our selection tool and basically just grab all these letters and we'll delete those out. Grab the inner parts since they got ungrouped. Then we will come up, grab our farms here, and we'll bring this back just like that. And now, I know it's subtle, but now all the lines and the angles are very crisp and should be a better representation from their logo. So we now have that set up. And of course, we're going to want to put this on an engrave later. So I'm going to group these back together in case we need to resize them. And I usually use this one as a fill. And I'm going to steal the settings. Now, these are Acacia boards. And I did a video just recently on Acacia and marble engraving boards, or cheese boards that we engraved on. And I found that 10,000 and about 70 to 80 works pretty well on the Acacia for a decent dark burn. So we're going to go with that and hope that that turns out pretty well. Now, what we're going to need to do is get this centered onto our item. Now, we could use the framing tool and kind of eyeball it, but I want to give us an additional guide. So we are going to look at our Acacia boards and we're going to kind of take some measurements and see how it works. All right, so one thing I want to do is I want to make sure that we can get this centered on this board pretty well. Now we could use the framing option, but what I want to do is actually give us a little bit of a guide on the laser. Now I don't have a camera set up in this enclosure. Because we did have that, we could use the overlay and try that out. But what we can do instead is kind of just give ourselves a jig or a line to get this aligned up. So I'm going to take this tape measure real quick. We're going to measure this out, and this is kind of curved, so I'm just trying to get the extents where it's the most, its furthest extent. So just a bit under 13 and 7/8, and this other dimension is about 9 and 7/8. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back here into Lightburn, and we're going to draw ourselves a guide. So we're going to come here and grab our box tool. We'll just draw a square, and then we're going to drop that back over on the black layer for the line. And then I'll unlock this, and we're going to come up here, and I said 13 and 7/8. So we're going to go 13.85 approximately, and the height being, I think we said 9 and 7/8. Yep. We'll go 9.85. And that is going to allow us to create a rectangle. And I'm just going to put a scrap piece of material in there that it's going to draw just a super faint line on there. So we are going to go something like 5,000 speed and 50 power, one line, and we'll draw that. So now I'm going to remove the engraving from the output, and we're going to just drop some material in here into the laser. So what I have is just kind of got a scrap piece of MDF here. We're going to put this down into the laser approximately centered, and then we are going to want to first home our laser, make sure that it's at its proper points, and then let's frame this box, make sure we're within the extents. Move it up just a little bit. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and we'll run just that line around. Hopefully you can see there, we basically draw ourselves a box that we can use to position our material in. Now we want to make sure we don't move this board at all until we get the engraving done. All right, so I'm going to set this board in here, and I'm going to try to align it on all the corners so it's just hitting those lines on the edges. And that will tell me that I've got my board aligned to the box, and then I can take my artwork and square it up to that box as well in Lightburn. All right, so back over here in Lightburn, what I want to do is switch these, so I'm going to change the output. I don't need the line, I do need the engraving. And what we can do is, from here, if we feel like we want to enlarge, oh, I didn't mean to draw a box, let's undo that. I wanted to select this. Now, if we want to enlarge this, we definitely can. And like I said, I've got about 7 inches, so I'm going to enlarge this to, I'm going to lock its proportions first, and then I'm going to enlarge this to 7 inches. That should just give us a little bit larger looking engraving. As a matter of fact, I'm going to take it up to, we'll take it up to 8. So that looks pretty good. We're going to go and double check our fill settings. We've got fill groups together. We've got a little bit of overscanning, bi-directional. That's good. And we're going to go in here. We do not have flood fill. So let's take a look at the preview, see how long that's going to take. This is saying 13 minutes, 17 seconds, which isn't terrible. It's just a little bit longer than I'd like, but again, this is a gift. I'm not overly concerned about it. We could see if we change this to flood fill, and also change this to, oh yeah, flood fill will override that. Now, if we do flood fill, that drops it down to 10 minutes, 41 seconds. So that might improve it for us. And we can just kind of scroll through the preview to see. Now this is one thing that would concern me, is when it breaks it up like this, and sometimes when you get those joining lines, you can get just weirdness. So I'm not always a fan of doing it that way. So I'm going to turn that off, and I'm going to go ahead and go with the extra 3 minutes. But we can also turn off flood fill. We'll come back to common. We can also do fill shapes individually and see how that has an effect on it. Here it's still 1312 because it's basically doing most of them together. But I'm going to start out with the S, jump over to the farms for some reason, and then fill in the and J part. I'm okay with that, and I'm okay with the 13 minutes. So now we're just going to get the focus set on the laser and double check everything that we've got our air going, and we will send the burn. All right, that finished up, so let's take a look at it. Looking pretty good. So the burn came out okay. In some of these lighter areas, you know, some of that sapwood, it might be a little bit lighter, but I think as we oil that up, that'll probably even out. And I'll also probably just take a little air to this, clean out a little bit of the dust and debris, clean it, lightly sand it possibly, run some compressed air over this, and I think that'll come out really well. So I'm happy with that as a gift. We could obviously have maybe shrunk it down to avoid those white bars and maybe gotten just a little more consistency, but I really wanted the logo to be fairly prominent on this board. So I'm gonna get this one cleaned up, and then I have a second one to try that we'll be doing with a similar image, but this time it'll be a raster. So hold on, we'll jump right into that. All right, we're back in Lightburn, and what I'm going to do is go ahead and remove our first logo here. I've already saved it, so we're good there. So I had grabbed this also from their site, and again, this is another farmer I work with from the local farmers markets, and they have been providing us with some nice pork products. And so I wanted to give them a board as well, but they have a more interesting design here. They have this kind of interesting sketched style of a pig, and then they have this kind of interesting kind of stamped looking logo. So I'm not going to be able to trace this one as is. Again, there's probably a font that was used for that possibly, but if I was working with them on actual products, I'd be sure to get a vector graphic from them. So we're going to go ahead and do this one as an image engraving. And so we're going to want to try to get this scaled appropriately. We're going to want it to fit the board similarly. So I've brought it in here. We've got it at roughly 7 by 7. And so what I want to do is I want to center it to this board again. So we select the object, the first object that we're wanting to center with the second one. This will tell it to center this one to the second one we select. And then we come up here and hit our align both vertical. And as you noticed, it moved this image without moving the other one. So that's a good tip there on the order you should select them in. And so that will center it for us. We've left our border the same so that we can use the same jig. And so we're going to want to come in here and adjust our settings. So on this one, with it being pixelated, I'm going to bring the speed down just a little bit. We're going to go with 9,000, but then we're also going to allow the max power to be 90 this time. And we've got our image mode set up as Atkinson. You know, that I usually jump between Atkinson and Jarvis on these engraves. If it was more photorealistic, I'd probably go with Jarvis, but Atkinson will probably do really well on here. And then we've got our overscanning on, which will help, and bidirectional as well. So let's go ahead and take a look at the preview on this one, see how long it's going to take. And oof, we are looking at 55 minutes. So that's a bit high for what I'm looking at. Let's double check some of our settings, make sure we don't have, oh, here's one. We've got the pass count set up as 2. We're going to drop that down to 1. That's going to cut our time down to about 27. And looking at the board, I'm thinking that perhaps our size might be a little large. So let's bring the height down to about 6 inches. And that should keep it centered. And that may actually fit and look a little bit better. And that brings us down to about 21 minutes. So, this being a gift, I'm okay with that. But ideally, I think what we would do is we would get this sized appropriately. If they wanted me to make these for them, I would probably adjust that down to where we're going to have a little bit less time on the laser than 21 minutes. So we're going to go ahead and go with this. I'll get this set up in the laser, and we will run it and check it out when it's done. So overall, not too bad. I will dust this off, and the bottom words are definitely darker than the top because they are so tight there. But I think once I dust this off with the compressed air and just rinse it and wash it, I think that's going to even out as well. So I'm going to go ahead and take care of that. We'll take a look at both boards, and we'll kind of wrap this up. All right, well, here are the completed oiled boards. And as I figured, the oiling did kind of help smooth out and even out some of those engravings on both of them. There's maybe just a little bit lighter engraving on the wider part of this acacia board, but overall they look great, and as this oil soaks in more, it'll be nice and ready to be used. They really should sit for a good 4 hours or overnight. So I'm gonna let these rest overnight, and then I'm gonna work on getting them delivered to these lovely businesses that have been great to my family, and so I'm glad to give back to them with these gifts. Hopefully these can give you some ideas, and you'd like to do this yourself. Grab some of those boards. I'll have the link down below, and give it a try. Make some gifts, or maybe another product to put on your sales table at the next craft fair. If you have any questions or comments about this, go ahead and leave them down below. I'd love to hear from you, your thoughts or your questions about it. I try to get back to those as quickly as I can. And if you like this video, hit the thumbs up. And if you're new here, please consider subscribing. It really does help out this channel. As always, I appreciate you watching, and love that this is a great community. And we hope to see you soon with my next project, video review or whatnot. But in the meantime, hope you get out into your workshop and can make something too. We'll catch you next time.